Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. In this edition, we shift focus from our western borders to the eastern front because the Dragon's operations on the northeast are important focus for Bharat because it seems the Xi Jinping regime is headed towards a realignment, looking at a strategy to weaponize Myanmar's territory and the internal strife to spread chaos in Bharat's northeast. The Northeast has seen several insurgencies over the last few years, and it seems the strife and economic opportunities have given some room to China to maneuver against India. First up, let's look at the economic angle that China aims to exploit vis-a-vis Myanmar. And this is exclusive information here on the Dragon's game plan on this edition of The Right Stand. Manoj Kumar Gupta getting us these details. First up, China aims to exert pressure on the northeast vis-a-vis security, economic proxies and proxy networks. So that is one of the first parts. The other thing is post-Operation Sindoor, China has established a joint security company to protect its investments in this region. China is accelerating infrastructure projects, boosting Myanmar's military capacity too. It is also fast-tracking Muse, Mandalay and the Kyakpyu railway and the CMEC linked pipelines. So that is infrastructure push. Along with that, China is also going to provide tactical support against ethnic armed organizations. So the CDF, CNDF clashes have also increased, and we'll get to that in a bit. Their support for Myanmar National Democratic Alliance against the anti-junta forces. And also, the mission to secure trade corridors like China-Myanmar Economic Corridor is also being accelerated. China to aid the consolidation of Myanmar's control in strategic zones near Bharat's borders. Now, China is also boosting control over trade routes in the Shan state, which borders northeast of India. China also aims to force India into a two-front challenge to manage instability in the northeast. And there, even in the northeast itself, there is the LAC dimension from Arunachal Pradesh downwards, and their pressure from there bearing down, and then from the bottom towards the south with Myanmar, southeast with Myanmar. Now, potential to also disrupt the India-Myanmar-Thailand highway and the Kaladan multimodal transit project. So these are important Bharat's infrastructure projects which may run into rough weather because if China surrounds that entire region and then puts pressure and gets into a pincer-like situation against Bharat around the northeast. So we just have to think about how the map of Bharat looks in that region, and then we know that China is actually trying to circle and is also to protect its own Belt and Road initiatives and also convert Myanmar into a totally vassal state. The military junta is one that works in accordance with the Chinese. There are also certain zones which are no man's land, which have become the hub for gangsters, cybercrime and otherwise. Now this also becomes a problematic development given the rise in insurgency activities in the northeast, and that has created a refugee crisis in the state of Mizoram. Top intelligence sources are telling CNN News 18 that fresh fighting reported between Chin resistance group in Myanmar and clashes between the Chin National Defense and Chinland Defense Force. Also, intelligence confirms arms trafficking in the northeast linked to the Myanmar rebels. Instability along the Indo-Myanmar border, inflow of refugees into Mizoram. Chin Unification Accord brokered in Aizawl has literally disintegrated. The total Myanmar refugee count in Mizoram now exceeds 35,000. Conflict for control of the Rikaudar-Phalam corridor is also on. This is very key for logistics. The threat of arms trafficking, cross-border infiltration and regional destabilization looms large. Mizoram could become a pressure point in India's eastern security, and there are other dynamics to this also. Now, this discord has also opened up several pressure points in the northeast which are causing a major security concern. There is a 510-kilometer long unfenced Indo-Myanmar border that enables unchecked movement of militants and arms near the Champai and also the Longthlai areas. 2nd of July, Chin National Defense Force actually set up checkpoints in the Kwatir village. And thereafter the CNDF launched drone strikes on the CDF positions in the Satong and the Tuichi regions. 245 new refugees have now entered Mizoram through the Zokhawtar area. And the Chinzo connection, the tribal connection, Kuki-Chinzo connection, that's another larger aspect where these tribes which were anciently linked then broke away. There is now this entire feeling of brotherhood, and Mizoram very, very clearly saying that they are not going to they are not going to turn them back. Now, this is an issue here. Colonel Shantikumar Sapam, spokesperson of the Mete Heritage Society, is with us. Dr. Anand Ranganathan also joining us this evening, author, political commentator, scientist here on the right stand. And we are also joined by Dr. Tongkolal Haukip, who's with us. He's the assistant professor at the Center for Study of Law and Governance at JNU. My namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you very, very much. Now, how would you assess this situation? Colonel Sapam, if I may start with you. The military junta is at conflict with some of the resistance forces. There is the China-America angle there. But for us at our borders, when we have so much strife, are we looking at some serious concerns, internal security and national security-wise?
Anandji, good evening, and thank you so much for having me in your show. What happened is, this area in the last few days, 4-5 days, a lot of refugees have, moved into Mizoram. This has been reported, and over there, it's reported. But in case of Manipur, it is not reported because we all know what is happening in Manipur. So the number of refugees would have been much more, and it's believed that more than 150 tribes, different tribes, are there in Myanmar. And since a long time, the Chinese interest in Myanmar has been there, and the business have been controlled since a long time. And at the same time, the US also has got a very, big role in this fight in Myanmar. So in the bargain, the central government had taken a few steps, few decisions were taken very rightly, I would say, and it was central government has understood the genesis of the problems in the northeast, and especially Manipur, and also Mizoram to a certain extent. After understanding the genesis of the problem, the clash and various things happening in the northeast, Manipur and Mizoram, not clash in Mizoram, so central government has taken to fence the area, which is the major step for the safety or, for the security of this country. Fencing is very important. And, FMR also, it's been taken out. It's fine, okay. Coming brothers and sisters across, alike people, staying over that side also, ethnic similarity is there. It's fine, okay. But then come with proper paper and with proper law, other rules and regulations. That is what the central government is saying, which has been opposed by the people around this area, which is very sad, basically. And, influx is there. There's just no doubt about that when we talk about the population increase and the villages increased in Manipur and things like that. It's very crystal clear that a lot of things are happening here and very complicated. And especially Manipur, though it's a very small state with a population of 30 lakhs. It's very complicated, and I would say the most complicated state in the country. This is what I would like to say. So the central government has to be very firm, and I think it is very firm. Home Ministry is very firm about this fencing. It's happening there, but then a lot of resistance are there. Not to have this fence, I don't want to basically name the community.
Here what happens is, one, there is an ethnic connect, and then there is also the ethnic differences. That also spills over into the religious borderlines, because there are also religious differences now that stem. Along with that, there is also what is happening, because it is not the same lands as they were historically. These are now different boundaries, international boundaries, some of them very, very loose. The third part is, from a national security point of view, these borders, as long as they remain undefined, it is very, very easy for hegemonistic forces, expansionist forces to make their moves in. And there are entities, different powers who want to ensure that this region remains fractured. Dr. Haukip, your thoughts here?
Yeah, to start with, I think we need to look into Northeast India historically as well as in terms of geography. Geographically, the Northeast region is 95% border with other countries, and only 18 years 2% in the scheduled corridor is with the rest of India. And historically, the region has been politically unstable, right? This political instability has been the problem, and this is due to various demands by ethnic groups in the past, and which continues to linger till today. So, unless we solve this political problem in the region, unless we look into the problems, for instance, in recent months, we have tried to solve the problem of frontier Nagaland or the Eastern Nagas issue. So once the Eastern Naga issue is solved, then largely Nagaland can be stable politically, and we have Manipur, we have different areas in the region. So we need to look into all these demands and try to give concessions to all these demands. And once these demands and ethnic groups who are rebelling against the Indian state for a certain form of concessions are resolved, I think that we will have a very stable northeastern region. And with stability, I think the outside influence, for instance, the string of peers theory, which is not dying at all. And this calculation should never go out of our strategic or national interests. And with the stability of the region, how the political violence is looked into, and these are being resolved, that will imply a lot to the future. So I think at this juncture, there's quite a lot of work needed to be done by the Home Ministry or the Indian government to look into all these kind of demands by smaller ethnic groups and settled. It's not only about development, connecting big roads with the other part of India. It's also about political solutions. And if we have a stable notice, then I think the kind of problems that we have from outside the region, for instance, from Myanmar, from Bangladesh, this could be resolved to a large extent. And we need to have confidence of the tribes and the communities in the region to have a strong Bharat, right? So during partition and during the division of between British India and Burma, many communities were segregated on the borders, and many people or many communities in this region have sympathy over their own ethnic groups who are on the other side of the border. So unless people in these border regions are politically taken into account, their demands, with
Yeah,
little
but
concessions are
what
being
is the
resolved,
extent
and
of these demands?
persist and
Whatever are these demands have to be in line with the constitution of our country and also aligned to the national interests. Now there is a huge amount of funding that is coming in from entities who don't want a resolution to happen. That is also a reality, and somewhere the religious lines that have been drawn, and the fights where you're trying to align tribes and groups not because of their heritage or their history but more because of their religious affiliations, that is also a problem in that region. So it is very, very complex. Small states, very important states, but then very, very complex equations here, and especially at a border that is porous. 510 kilometers of our border porous there, Professor Ranganathan. There is 600 odd kilometers of borders which are open with Bangladesh, and more than 3,500 or 4,000 kilometers that is open with occupied Chinese territory and also with China. So we are very, very vulnerable on the eastern front.
Good evening, Anand. First of all, and good evening to my fellow panelists, both of whom are experts. So I speak as a layman here. But first of all, I need to thank you for consistently focusing on the Northeast and having such debates, because it's important. There is absolutely no doubt about it that even in our political circles internally, the issues of Northeast, especially the security, are often neglected. So thank you. Anand, the way I see this as a layman, the problem is actually threefold. The problem is external. That will be my first point. The problem is internal. And the problem is on the fence, literally on the fence. So let me talk about these three issues very briefly. As you've already elucidated, India's border with Myanmar, particularly that 500 kilometer stretch through Mizoram. Yes, you're right. It poses significant security challenges due to its porous nature and complex socio-political dynamics. The free movement regime, the FMR, allowing visa-free travel up to 10 kilometers across the border, actually has been exploited by insurgents, drug traffickers, and arms smugglers. The problem is that rugged terrain with dense forests and mountains, and it hampers effective patrolling by the Assam Rifles, which, by the way, deploys only 15 of its 46 battalions for border guarding. Insurgent groups like NSC and K find safe havens in Myanmar. We know that. And, all the drone surveillance has actually proved that. It is facilitated by ethnic ties with Myanmar's political instability post 2021 coup. Drug trafficking, particularly opium from Myanmar's Golden Triangle, is also fueling socio-economic issues in the northeast. Human trafficking, illegal immigration, including Chin refugees, you mentioned about that, further strain resources. Now, India's plan to fence the entire border with 401 kilometers to be completed by, incidentally, this month, faces resistance from local tribes. They fear disruption of cultural ties. I think that has to be tackled first. And the lack of Myanmar's cooperation as well is a problem, combined with, of course, and I'll come to that in a second, China's growing influence through radar deployments, infrastructure projects, and support to Myanmar's Janta. It heightens the threat. The strategic maneuvering by China along the border is actually undermining security. Now, let me very briefly come to the other issue, because that's internal. Because mainland access to the northeast is constrained by the so-called chicken neck Siliguri Pass, 95% of all northeast trade goes through this chicken neck. India has now planned two economic corridors, the Bhutan-Bodoland Bay of Bengal B3 corridor and the Hill-Mahendraganj Transnational Economic or HMT corridor.
Yes.
They will, when complete, revolutionize connectivity, trade and security in the entire region. For example, the 100-kilometer HMT corridor will cut travel time and cost by half. And that is what is troubling China and its newfound poodle Yunus. Bangladesh is flanked by hill in the West Bengal and Mahendraganj in the Garo Hills of Meghalaya. To connect them would mean bypassing the entire chicken neck and cut travel distance by 700 kilometers. National Highways Authority and Indian Railways has already conducted a survey, but then came the coup in Bangladesh, and now there is a Chinese and Pakistani puppet in place. It goes without saying that China wouldn't want this corridor, and that is why this ventriloquist is speaking through the puppet. But the other corridor, the B3 corridor, is a more secure and strategic initiative to connect Bhutan with the Bay of Bengal through Assam and Meghalaya. There will be key transit points like Jogi Jhopa in Bodoland and Phulbari in Meghalaya that will serve as logistical hubs for the B3 corridor, allowing access to water, rail and road cargo, providing us with access to Bhutan's markets. Importantly, 10 seconds. Northeast, especially Bodoland, will become rich and economically more stable. And that is what China doesn't want. So the entire issue, as put very succinctly by you and the panelists, is that China is trying to actually not allow India to actually act in its favor externally, internally, and literally on the fence.
Yeah, not just along with on the fence, even Bhutan there is a pressure point there. There is Bhutanese territory where again, time and again, China wants to swap and make a straight swap of territory which is part of the natural reserve, and India has blocked it often. It all stems around the Doklam region and of course the entire natural reserve there, where the Chinese have often offered to the Bhutanese that we'll swap this. But moment that swap happens, there will be a problem with this corridor that they plan to build. But there are, like you said, internal reasons. Before I go back to Colonel Sapam, viewers, there is also this entire alarm over the lack of internal cohesion, which is a challenge. And this threat, as per top intelligence sources, say it is a serious one. Mizoram's open support for the Kuki-Zo cause has worsened ties with Manipur. And after threats from insurgent-linked groups, 184 Meitei fled Mizoram in 2023. Those numbers are far greater than as being reported. We must put that caveat here. There is a deepening ethnic mistrust also that has led to increased interstate surveillance. Northeast states are struggling with planned containment and humanitarian coordination. So now how do we take this forward, Colonel Sapam? Because if there is a fight between Meitei and Kuki, and here on the right stand we put out that in a recent raid in Chittagong at a garment factory in Bangladesh, there were more than 30,000 uniforms that were being made for a Kuki-Chin front. And then there were other uniforms being made for insurgent groups which are operating in this region along with the Chin corridor, but they are based in Bangladesh. So there are serious concerns internally too.
Anandji, what I perceive is that basically there's not a clash between the Meiteis and the Cookies. The clash is because of the powers, basically. The powers who are, who are in power, basically, because of that. Instructions are being passed by these powerful people, and thereafter, things happen, basically. And it turns out to be, it projected as ethnic clash, basically. It's not ethnic clash. There are many people who, they ring me up, they tell me what the things, about the things, what is happening over here, and they feel very sad about this. And they are also looking forward to, peace coming to Manipur and things like that. I'm talking about the other people from the other community. It is not a clash, basically. It is a, pre-planned, agenda with the, various, activities going on in the Northeast and in Burma. And Burma has been always, the boil since a very long time, since the beginning. After the British left, there have been always a fight in Burma, Myanmar, which is Myanmar now. And, as we said, the struggle for power, Chinese influence and US influence, all these things are there. And we also must understand that the Burma will never end. It will continue. It will continue. It's not that the Kuki people or the Jaw people, the citizens, they want this type of clash, or the Meitei wants this clash. No, it is not so. But then, when we see it, the agenda or the aim of, Christian country and all those things are very clear. One may say that it is not so and all, but it is very clear. It is very crystal clear. This is what I would like to say. And if the common people, if we do not take the stand and go with the instructions given by the Home Ministry, I think this conflict will continue. This is what I would like to say.
Right. Dr.
We'll have to respect.
Somewhere there has to be underlined, Dr. Haukip, that the internal issues need to be resolved, set aside and done peacefully, and anybody trying to weaponize groups within our country should be dissuaded and thwarted locally also, irrespective of differences. Because we have a greater duty to the nation, and that needs to be underlined. I think a lot of amends have been made. Things have changed in the last decade and a half compared to how it was. There was a time when the northeast of our country was totally neglected, and there was a huge sense of alienation because it was blind spotted. But that's not the case today, Dr. Haukip. And I think many would realize that.
I totally agree with you. What is lacking in the Northeast right now is, you have pointed out that the lack of internal cohesion, right? That's exactly why I say, the political demands has to be looked into carefully and without delay, right? Without further delay, concessions has to be made within the Constitution of India. I'm talking about political solutions, not within or outside the Constitution of India. I'm talking about how constitutionally these demands can be resolved peacefully. So if we have a peaceful Northeast or internally cohesive Northeast, then the external threats would be minimized to a large extent, and problems could be solved within the region itself. And external threats could, be, met in unison with, different communities. So what I, has been emphasizing is about how we solve these, political problems within the region. We have frontier Nagaland problem. We have the problem of Arunachal Pradesh. We have several demands in Manipur. We have other groups in Tripura and Meghalaya, with certain demands. For instance, the ILP demand in Meghalaya, which has been raising for the last 30, 40 years. So how do we look into it? All these demands, I think we need to seriously look into it. The demands in Karbi Anglong, Dima Hasa, all this has to be settled peacefully. And then with that settlement, I think we will have a peaceful Northeast where you have a cohesive, communities in this region.
Right.
And with that, we can think about external threats, internal linkage, external linkage. All these, discussions can be put forward. So what we need right now is the commitment of the Home Ministry to solve all these issues within the framework of the Indian Constitution.
Yes.
Anand, can I-
Yes, Anandji.
No, I almost entirely agree with the good Professor Hawkip, except to say, just add a few bits of my own. You see, I think this government has been, no doubt about it, very proactive in assimilating the hitherto ignored areas of India. But here's the thing, it almost always wants to approach solving the issues through building infrastructure and connectivity. I mean, it goes beyond saying, I mean, you look at Kashmir, for example, the kind of infrastructure buildup that Kashmir has had is unprecedented. It's not had it in the last 60 years, what it has in the last 5 years. The same goes with Northeast. But here is the thing. Unless you also tackle the political situation, which of course in Kashmir has to be tackled resolutely, so in the Northeast, I'm afraid you can build as much infrastructure as you want. The problem is not going to be solved. Now, I'll give you just 10 seconds the example out here.
Ji.
It was the Congress government at the center and at Manipur, the state, which the previous panelist talked about the acrimony. All it asked for was a white paper to resolve the tribal acrimony as far as the reservations were concerned. That did not happen. The governments at both center and the states changed to BJP. They did exactly the same thing, asked for a white paper. That didn't happen. The High Court stepped in, asked for the same thing. And we know what happened in the last 2 years. The whole state was on the boil. So much so, talk about being resolute, the opposite happened. Anand, the High Court had to redact its request.
Yeah.
So unless we ourselves are resolute about solving the political situation, I'm afraid you can add as much connectivity and infrastructure to to the cauldron, but it might not solve the issue. That is my problem.
Fair point. And yes, Colonel Sapam, final word, sir. We got big news coming through.
Yes. What I would like to submit is, any party or any group or any community may demand whatever they feel right for them or for their welfare. Separate administration, there was a big rally in 2016 also in Manipur by the Kugis. When the Meiteis have requested for ST, I think it is the central government who is supposed to whether give it or not to give it. Other community, when this separate administration was demanded by the Kugis in 2016 and 1969, the Meiteis never said anything. It was a demand to the government of India or let's say government of Manipur.
Right.
But when the Meiteis, when they demanded the ST status for them, it came down to burning of houses, raping of females, killing. It's very atrocious because.
It is
I
atrocious,
feel
but the larger question is, was it motivated, was it indicated, was it pushed from with certain ulterior motives to try and deliberately stoke this fire? That's the larger question. And who's weaponizing them? Who's allowing them to get into this entire opium trade? Why are the hills now becoming into opium fields? These are questions that need to be asked. There is somebody who's buying all this opium, right? There is somebody who's also supplying all these arms and weapons. Somewhere these entities are backing them. Which are these entities? Let's call them out. And I think from there on, the rest of it would also come through. Now, you can't clap with one hand. Both sides have to drop back, push back, and pull back, and then also take a larger, far greater worldview than getting into this day-to-day thing about who's bigger than whom and whose ego is greater, etc. I'm just saying, conflict resolution will come only when both sides want to resolve it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And it stems from this entire thing is that the other person is here to wipe me out. Moment that fear, that threat is negated, it's done away with, the conflict is resolved. That's where it is. Thank you, gentlemen. Dr. Ranganathan, do stay on with us. But big news coming through before we move on to our other big story here on The Right Stand.